Hello guys, and welcome back to the Insights Tales. September 11th, the biggest news of 21st century. This one day changed the lives of Muslims of the whole world forever. On one side, there was the world's biggest superpower, America, and on the other side, there was a man named Osama Bin Laden. This was not the first time that someone tried to bring down these twin towers of America, because these twin towers were one of the tallest buildings of the world at that time, and without any doubt, these buildings were the most famous buildings of the world, because almost 500 Hollywood movies were made inside and around these buildings. So whoever wanted to bring down these buildings knew very well that when these buildings of World Trade Center in New York fall down, then it will be the biggest news of the coming world. Like if someone brings down Burj Al Khalifa today, then, from today, exactly 23 years ago, the situation of the world was that Soviet Union had collapsed, and China did not have that much power. In those days, America was the one and only superpower of the world whose power no one could challenge. But suddenly, on a normal day, September 11th, 2001, 19 people reached different airports to hijack 4 big planes of America. Looking at all the reports of America, till now, it seems that 19 out of these 19 people were Muslims, and all of them belonged to Saudi, Egypt, Lebanon, and UAE. To hijack each plane, teams of 5 people were formed, in which every person had a very important role, and for all this, they were also getting training for the last several months. So finally, these 4 planes left from their airport, and as soon as these planes took off, these people started hijacking the planes. And as per the plan, after just 15 minutes in the air, the 5 hijackers present in the first plane stood up, and with some small knives and box cutters, they hijacked the entire plane very quickly, and after killing both the pilots, they made their man Mohammed Atta sit on the pilot's seat and pushed all the passengers to the back side, and clearly told them that now both the pilots of the plane are dead. So this plane can be landed only by our man Mohammed Atta, due to which all the passengers stood quietly. But the hijackers never wanted to land this plane. Now, when the new pilot of this plane, Mohammed Atta, was explaining these things to the passengers, he accidentally pressed another button of the plane, due to which it got directly connected with the tower of New York Airport, and he said,
"Nobody move, please. Going back to the airport. Don't try to make any stupid move."
On hearing this, confusion spread in the New York airport, and they quickly cleared the runway by removing all the planes from the airport runway and started waiting for this plane. After this, again, Mohammed Atta accidentally connected with the airport tower again, and he said, this plane was first going from Boston to Los Angeles, which is a very long journey. So Mohammed Atta turned this plane 100 degrees and started moving towards New York. And as soon as it reached near the city of New York, the plane started coming down from its height very fast. And clearly everyone felt that this plane is coming down, so that it can land at the airport of New York. That is why all the people in the airport also started waiting for this plane after seeing this. But even after a lot of time, the plane did not reach, and all the people in the airport were confused as to where did this plane go. So finally, someone came and told them that this plane has crashed into the World Trade Center building. Now only the airport people knew what actually happened, but the American media did not know anything about this. That is why every news channel started broadcasting it as a very big accident. During all this, the President of America, George Bush, was sitting in a school for children in Florida. His secretary came and quietly told him about this incident. His first reaction was that this must be an accident. The first plane was hijacked just 15 minutes after takeoff, but the second plane was hijacked 30 minutes later, just like the first plane. This timing of hijacking the planes was also planned in advance. It means that whoever was behind these attacks wanted the whole world to see the crash of the second plane. Marwan al-Shehi, who was only 23 years old, was hijacking the second plane with his companions. He hijacked the plane and sat on the pilot's seat and again diverted the plane towards New York instead of Los Angeles. Now, when the news channels of the whole world were leaving their normal programs and showing the crash of the first plane and calling it a very big accident, at the same time, in front of the whole world, the second plane came at full speed and collided with the second tower of the World Trade Center. Seeing this, people were a little confused at first, but then slowly everyone understood that this was not an accident, but an attack.
The U.S. was under attack.
And again, the American president's secretary came and told this in his ears again, and said, "Mr. President, America is under attack." After this, the American army went on full high alert and ordered all the ships of the country to land. But there were still 2 ships which these people had hijacked, and no one knew which was going to be the next target of these 2 ships. The third plane, which was being flown by a Saudi citizen, Hani Hanjour, instead of turning the plane towards New York, turned it towards the U.S. capital Washington, and as soon as he reached near Washington, he brought his plane down very low and increased the speed of the plane to full, and this plane was moving very fast towards the Pentagon, one of the most important buildings in the world, #1 intelligence agency, CIA headquarters. After this plane crashed on the Pentagon, the whole world started showing clips of the Pentagon, except the World Trade Center, but still one plane was missing. When the U.S. Army checked the direction of this plane, then they saw that this plane was also heading towards Washington, and it may target the U.S. Parliament Capitol. So, to shoot down this plane, 2 fighter jets were sent at full speed on the orders of the U.S. Vice President, and these jets were ordered to shoot down this plane at any cost, even if all the passengers died. 3 planes had reached their targets exactly as per the plan, but the 4th plane, which was being flown by Zaid Jarrah, could never reach its target capital because, by the time this plane was hijacked, the World Trade Center had already been attacked. Zaid Jarrah again told all the passengers in the same way that everyone should sit comfortably. And we are going towards the airport, but when one of the passengers contacted his wife from the plane's phone, his wife told him that the hijackers were lying, and this was not the airport. Rather, this is a suicide mission. This guy went and explained to the other passengers that, look, we are going to die anyway, but before these hijackers crash this plane on a building, we all ourselves should crash this plane. On this, all these passengers together attacked the hijackers. Seeing this, Zaid Jarrah started shaking the plane up and down and side to side. But even after trying a lot, the passengers finally reached the cockpit door of the plane, and as soon as they were about to break the door of the plane, the pilot of this plane, Zaid Jarrah, increased the speed of the plane to full and turned it towards the ground, and in this way, this 4th and last plane was destroyed. Now the news channels of the whole world again started showing the 4th plane. Then suddenly, just 1 hour later, the South Tower of the World Trade Center of New York collapsed. 1,000 people died, and after some time the second tower also collapsed, and 1,600 people were killed in it too. Overall, 3,000 people were killed in these 4 attacks of 9/11. Out of which 200 people were only those who jumped from the top floor of the World Trade Center and died due to the fire in these buildings. But a few days after these attacks, an interview of the father of Mohammed Atta, who was the leader of this whole plan, came out in which he refused to believe all this and put the entire blame on Israel's intelligence agency Mossad, and said that no such attack is allowed in Islam. The parents of the pilots of this 3rd and 4th plane also refused to believe the reports of America. And if we look at the families of these attackers, then these were not ordinary poor people. Rather, all these attackers were from very well of rich families. This 9/11 attack was so big that for 100 days after this attack, every day in New York, there was a lot of fear. Dust was spread all over, and almost billions of dollars were spent to clean up the rubble of these destroyed buildings. But still, the collapse of the World Trade Center America did not suffer much loss. The actual loss happened in another building, at a little distance from these buildings, which people always forget, and that building was New York Stock Exchange Market Absolute Hammered Age. After these attacks, panic spread in the markets of America, and the Stock Exchange of America started crashing, and the stocks of almost all the countries started falling in, which the biggest loss was suffered by Warren Buffett's company Berkshire Hathaway, and it is said that America suffered a loss of $1.4 trillion due to these attacks. And the GDP of America, which was growing at 4% and 5% before this, came down below 1% after the 2001 attacks. But now, when the stocks of all the companies were going down in the stock exchange, there were some companies in between, which instead of suffering loss from these attacks, made a lot of profit. And the shares of these companies started going up. And these companies were war companies, gun manufacturing companies, fighter companies. Almost all the investors of America started investing their money in these companies, which made jets and tanks. Why were they doing this? Because everyone knew that America will now start a very big war to take revenge of 9/11. Because of this, the whole world was looking at American President George Bush as to who and why dared to do this to America, the biggest superpower of the world, and the whole America was filled with anger. A few days after these attacks, George Bush finally came in front of the whole world and told everyone that there was no country or government behind these attacks. Rather, it was a terrorist attack, and there was only one organization behind these attacks, Al-Qaeda and its leader Osama Bin Laden, who was sitting comfortably in Afghanistan, far away from all this. Now, when the whole world was blaming Osama bin Laden for these attacks, when the world was blaming the terrorists for the attacks, Osama bin Laden came forward and gave an interview to Al Jazeera, saying that he had nothing to do with these attacks, but he also gave some other statements due to which people of the whole world were confused, whether he had done it or not. After these attacks, not only Osama, but Muslims and scholars of the whole world came forward and strongly opposed these attacks, because if anyone has read about the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then he would know that he used to give orders to Muslims before every war that even during the war, do not cut any woman, child, old man, and even trees, and do not kill farmers and priests of other religions. Fight only those who fight you, meaning such a soft-spoken and always forgiving Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How could anyone do such a thing in the name of the religion of Allah? That is why, after these attacks, the biggest organization of Muslims, OIC, came forward and opposed these 9/11 attacks. Apart from them, the Grand Mufti of Mecca also gave a statement that these attacks are against Islam. Even Ayatollah Khamenei, who is considered an enemy of America, also gave a statement that these attacks have nothing to do with Islam. But even after all this, the image of Islam started deteriorating in Western countries, and Islamophobia started increasing. For example, people started beating women wearing hijab on the road. Many Muslims were fired from their jobs in Western countries, and some Muslims were even killed. And for the first time on TV, a debate started whether Islam is a peaceful religion or not. But even after all these things, the sense of the Muslims was that whoever carried out these attacks, we are against all of them. Now, even after Osama bin Laden denied it, the US put the entire blame on Osama bin Laden. The US gave an ultimatum to the Afghan government Taliban that all the leaders of Al-Qaeda, including Osama bin Laden, should be handed over to the US at any cost. But Afghanistan did not do so because just a few years before this, Afghanistan had defeated a very big superpower, the Soviet Union, after a 10-year war, and Osama bin Laden had played a very big role in helping the Afghans in that war, due to which the Taliban government, whose leader was Mullah Muhammad Umar, used to respect Osama bin Laden a lot, on which Taliban said to the US government that the person on whom you are blaming is not accepting that he has done all this. You prove to us, we will punish him ourselves, and without proof, we cannot hand over our guest to anyone. But America did not accept their offer and said, look, I am a superpower and you are a common poor country. I do not need to give you any proof. Just hand over this man to me, or else we will attack Afghanistan and finish the Taliban, because the US generals had already done their research that the Taliban can stand in front of us only for a few weeks. After that, we will finish them. But Taliban, being Pathan, of course, did not listen to them. So America also started planning to attack Afghanistan to stop this war. Taliban also made one last attempt and told America that we, Osama Bin Laden, is handed over to a third country, which neither listens to you nor to us, and it can decide independently. But America was intoxicated with its power, and it did not accept this offer of Afghanistan and attacked Afghanistan just a month after 9/11. George Bush called this war a crusade and named it War on Terror, and started sending its army from all sides towards Afghanistan, and the most powerful Afghan inside Afghanistan against Taliban was Ahmed Shah Massoud. America fully supported his army, and exactly according to America's plan, they conquered the whole of Afghanistan by removing Taliban. But while doing all this, America had a very big hurdle in its way: media, and especially Al Jazeera. Because, till now, the media of the whole world was showing only America's side, but Al Jazeera was the only channel which was showing both sides. Al Jazeera was showing the American side and the Afghan side on its TV, in which American jets were targeting not only Taliban, but also civilians, which, till now, all other channels like BBC, CNA, etc., were not showing. The US Army got very angry at this, and just 4 weeks after the attack on Afghanistan, they blew up the headquarters of Al Jazeera in Kabul with one of their planes so that Al Jazeera could not report there, and even sent their cameraman to the world's most dangerous prison, Guantanamo Bay, so that Al Jazeera could be silenced by all these things. The planning of the American generals was absolutely correct, because just 3 months after September 11th, the Taliban government ended in Afghanistan, after which Afghanistan had no leader. That is why America started looking for a new leader of Afghanistan and organized a very big conference in the German city of Bonn, in which they talked to some Afghan leaders. And after making them sit together, they chose a new leader for Afghanistan from Germany, Hamid Karzai, who was completely opposite to the Taliban. He seemed to be an unfulfilled man and was the CIA's favorite. America made Hamid Karzai the new president of Afghanistan, and to strengthen his rule, trained a new army and formed a new government. Removing other governments and installing a government of their choice is America's old business. But if we look at the history of Afghanistan, they never accepted any leader from outside, and to top that, Hamid Karzai's government was so corrupt that the Afghan people could not even accept it. Everything went on like this, and it seemed the Taliban had clearly lost this war. But 2 years later, in 2003, America started a new war, Iraq War against, due to which America's entire focus shifted from Afghanistan to Iraq, where they told a big lie to remove Saddam Hussein, which they themselves believe today.
The fact that the intelligence we received was wrong.
When America's focus shifted from Afghanistan, the Taliban slowly started regrouping under the leadership of Mullah Omar and started making small attacks on American forces. Saddam Hussein's rule ended in Iraq, but America had made so many big mistakes in that war that it was impossible to hide them. For example, some pictures were released from an American prison in Iraq, in which the US forces were treating Iraq very badly, and these pictures were spread in the media all over the world, which tarnished the image of America. And on the other hand, the Taliban in Afghanistan also used this image to try to convince the Afghans that all this happens in US prisons. Because of these atrocities in Iraq, when Bush visited Iraq, He was even hit with shoes. This not only tarnished America's image in Iraq, but also in Afghanistan, and the Taliban started getting stronger again. Apart from this, one reason for the strength of the Taliban was that Afghanistan is a very tribal society, and whenever the American army killed an Afghan, his entire family and clan joined the Taliban. So, by killing Afghans in this way, the Taliban became stronger instead of getting weaker, and their numbers had also increased a lot. Osama bin Laden had to involve in the 9/11 attack, but before the 2004 US election, a video of Osama bin Laden came out in which he addressed the Americans and accepted full responsibility for 9/11. And in this video, Osama bin Laden also prayed for the 19 people who had carried out 9/11. And America got a warning that he can do it again, meaning Osama bin Laden took full responsibility for 9/11 3 years after it. After this speech, George Bush again became strong in American politics and won the election after some time. And after winning the election, he again sent troops to Afghanistan after Osama bin Laden. But even then, for the next 4 years, neither Osama bin Laden could be found, nor Afghanistan could be conquered, nor the Taliban could be finished. This war of Afghanistan, which lasted only for a few weeks, it continued for 10 years after September 11th. And now, after George Bush, America had a new president, Barack Obama. As soon as Obama came, instead of reducing the war as promised, he increased it further and sent more American troops to Afghanistan, due to which the number of American troops increased to more than 1 lakh. And along with that, Obama also increased drone attacks and airstrikes. And under his rule, in 2011, 10 years after 9/11, America finally got a target about Osama bin Laden, who was not hiding in Afghanistan, but in Pakistan. Now, there are 2 versions of this sentence. One is the version of America and Pakistan, and the other is the version of some senior journalists. Osama bin Laden was living with his 3 wives, children and grandchildren in the Pakistani city of Abbottabad for the several years, where America itself found him through an operation and then killed him, whose Pakistani army and the government had no idea. But America had kept a reward of $25 million for the capture of Osama bin Laden. That is why a retired colonel of Pakistan Army, Iqbal Saeed Khan, gave the location of Osama bin Laden to the US CIA. To confirm this news, America started a fake vaccine campaign with Shakil Afridi in Abbottabad and started scanning this house in Abbottabad from all sides. And suddenly one day, they saw a 6-foot man walking in the lawn of this house. And then, finally, on 2nd May 2011, on the orders of President Obama, 2 helicopters from the city of Jalalabad in Afghanistan left for Abbottabad at night to kill Osama bin Laden, which the Pakistan army had no idea about. And there in America, Obama and his ministers were watching all this live. These helicopters landed at Osama bin Laden's house and took his body back to Afghanistan, where it was confirmed by DNA test that this was Osama bin Laden. And then, after taking pictures of his dead body, Osama bin Laden's body was thrown into the sea. According to the American army, they threw his body into the sea and did not bury it on land, so that it does not happen that someone goes ahead and builds a big shrine on his grave. I hope you will like and share this video of Insight's Tales. See you in the next great video.